my story is going to be a little different than everybody else's. If you remember, the Pike Central Chargers girls softball team was playing what I think was the semi-state in Bedford. And Karen and I and Jody Elkins and Terry Warnica, for whatever reason, we were following the team and we went to the game. All right, the game's over. We start to come back to Petersburg. And my daughter is in a dance recital or performing at the Hauptstadt Festival, whatever they call that. She and two of her friends were there dancing in this festival. My parents were babysitting, so to speak. So we're in Bedford. We come back to Petersburg, and if you remember, there's a gas station just, I don't know, south, I guess, of Bedford, and it was getting kind of cloudy. So we pulled in there and said, "What's going on?" They said, "Oh my gosh, there's a tornado coming towards Bedford. It's coming right this direction. You better leave," or whatever. So I said, "Okay." So we thought we were pretty smart. We said, "Well, let's just go to Bloomington, go up to Nick's and have dinner." So the four of us go up to Nick's. If most of you might know, that's a sports bar right on campus. Just happen to know that. But anyway, we go into Nick's and we walk in, and the news, the place is full. But we noticed on the TV after we were seated, there was a tornado that hit Petersburg, Indiana. Oh my God, that's Petersburg, Indiana. So we started to come back to Petersburg. By then, it had already hit. Petersburg was a mess and everybody knew this. So we get to the White River Bridge out here, and like John said, it was all backed up. You couldn't come into Petersburg. The police were there. Some guy comes up, knocks on the window and said, "Hey, are you that Chevrolet dealer in Petersburg?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "Dealership just got clobbered. All the cars in the building." I said, "Okay." But they wouldn't let us through. So I said, "All right." I didn't know how bad it was. He just said it just wiped out. All right. So knowing that, instead of waiting in line like we should have, we turned around and we decided, "Hey, we'll go to Otwell. We'll go 257, come back around in that way." Well, we thought that was pretty clever. But what was really I couldn't get over were all the emergency vehicles we could see. Then this is really something bad in Petersburg. So we came in that way. And of course, we went around some county roads, I don't know, literally went under a down power line. I remember getting out to see if we can get under the power line, and was silly enough to drive under this power line. We got back to Petersburg and saw the mess that it was. Of course, the dealership was just all the cars in the building, just a mess. And and finally we find our daughter, who's out like everybody else. It was like a street fair at that point. Everybody was out wandering out looking at what had happened, and just for the next few days it was just a mess. Obviously, we just spent nothing but cleaning up the mess. But then, of course, it was funny because my daughter was here last evening for dinner, and we were talking about, "What do you remember about this?" Well, she said she remembers my parents being so mad at her because they were responsible for her and they couldn't find her, and she, like everybody else, was downtown looking at all the damage that was done. So it's funny when you talk to people, and tomorrow will be an anniversary of that, and everybody has their story, but it's really funny when you hear these stories because it really was something for the city of Petersburg. It truly was. But like we businesses, what was so interesting about that, the path that it took, as everybody knows, it hit the Moose Lodge, and there was a wedding going on there, and of course we were right across the street, and John was right next to that. So how we were impacted right there in that immediate path coming right at Pike Avenue, jumped over us, and our home up on East Main Street, the umbrella was still up on the patio. It wasn't disturbed at all. But and of course it went on to hit the elementary school and took out the elementary school. But that path was clearly identified. But it's really interesting. About once a year, you hear people tell their stories of where they were, what happened at that time. But it really is something you never forget.